everybody, welcome back to the Bad Influence Garage. Right now we are getting the chassis set up ready. And a lot of people have been getting really excited for what we're going to change, going from a big tire to a radial for Radial versus the World. And we're going to go over a lot of the stuff. We filmed a few things earlier as we were putting the front end together that Al is going to show you here coming up. And then we're going to get into what we're doing today on here. So we're going to go ahead and get to Al's previous stuff right now. Today we are going to be going over what we're going to be changing on our suspension for going from a big floppy tire, like a no prep style setup, to a drag radial for Radial versus the World. Now, as you've seen, I do all the engine stuff. You've seen that in the previous videos. Al takes care of all of our suspension stuff, and we just got a bunch of pieces back from Menser Motorsports. He's going to go over kind of how we put together the front struts and what they changed, and then also the rear suspension. So I'm going to go ahead and let Al take over.
Like Greg alluded to, we don't know, and we'll be the first to admit, we don't know that much about the radial racing. We know the basics behind it and all that, but we've never been on radials before. I made a couple phone calls to people who do know about radial racing, such as Menser Motorsports, for the suspension work. I sent all the shocks and struts in. They did their magic to it. Their magic basically consists of revalving for radial tire. And then they also gave us some different springs. They wanted us to spring the car differently than what we would do on a big tire. So we got all the stuff back. Absolutely wonderful stuff. It didn't take that long to get it. Mark and his crew down there, absolutely fantastic. So now we're getting ready to put it all back together. So what I'm going to do is start with the front and get the struts put in. And then we'll move on to the back and put the shocks in. But got some really good stuff here. We're going to go ahead and get ready to start assembly. So what we're going to do is we're going to start doing some assembly on these, putting the springs on, getting them ready to put up into the car, and setting up some ride height essentials. So some of the first things that we're going to do is just start laying out the parts. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to assemble the shock here. I'm going to show you how the components go together. These started their life as Avco Terminator struts. Very good struts. I won't run anything but the Avco stuff. So the first thing you want to do is you want to put on your bearing. The bearing goes right down here, and make sure that you put race, bearing, race. Otherwise you'll wear that bearing right out. That'll go on there. Got a little rubber bumper stop. That's going to go on. Your spring is going to go on top. And now with that bearing down there, it's very much easier to go ahead and turn this while you're turning the bearing instead of trying to turn the spring down there. Top cap going to go on. Top washer going to go on there also. You're going to have another poly bushing, if you want to call it. That's going to go on top there. Now these are going to go up into the frame, the mount, and then you're going to have another one of these poly bushings that's going to go on top. You're going to have another washer that's going to go on top of that, and then you're going to have a nut that goes on top of that. Now, make sure that when you take and put these together, for the top knob on there, there's these little clips. I don't know if you can see that. These little clips like here, they go onto the strut, and that's what actually gives you the clicking sensation.
guys, so we've got our crankshaft height set. We're gonna go over that in a moment. I'm gonna show you the car too. We have the body and everything on it, and it's sitting real low on the ground. It looks, I don't use it too often, but it looks sexy. I'm just gonna say that there. I think it's the lowest sitting car, or the lowest slung car that we've ever had, so it's pretty cool. But I want to go over some of the stuff on my whiteboard here that what we're gonna change. So I'm gonna go on the other side of the camera here and just kind of point this out to you. So let's adjust this. Here we go. Okay. So for our radial setup, what the things that we are going to change, or we are changing on there, is our front and rear percentages are going to be 55 in the front, 45 in the rear. We've already put it on the scales, and we're within what, half a percent of that?
Yeah,
quarter of a percent. Our pinion angle, we are going to keep that to ourselves on here because that is kind of a deal that some of the people we're working with, they don't want us to give away everything. So, but the pinion angle is measured at full droop, which means that the rear end is drooping all the way down, and then that's where you're going to measure that at. The bottom bar, because we run a 4-link setup on there, the bottom bar, you want, with it sitting with the weight on there, 1.5 inches to 3 inches of rise. That's going to be from the back, like this here. So on the rear end here to on the chassis as it's coming up, you want to have a 1.5 to 3 inch rise, and that is going to be very, very dependent upon your power level, what chassis you have. If you have like a stock rear suspension Fox body, it's going to be completely different than an RvW, 4-link deal on there. So this is just a ballpark to get you in the area on that. And then on the rear end here, here to your top bar there, this is called a spread, and we want to try to get the largest, excuse my chicken scratch there, but we want the largest spread that we can from here to here. All right, now the top bar, which is going to be here, we want to have it on the middle to highest hole. That's going to give us the largest spread possible. But right here, we want a spread, because we're going to have a bar here. This spread right here, we want 6.25 to 7 inch. And again, that is going to be dependent upon your tire that you're going to be using. If it's a 275 versus a 315, it's going to be a little bit different. If it's going to be a stock rear suspension versus a 4-link rear suspension, it's going to be different. That's all going to be different, but this is going to give you kind of an idea of what's going on. Our crankshaft height, right here, we want from 10 to 11 inches in that area on there. It all depends on the weight of your engine is going to make a big difference on there, where if you're running a 4G63, 4-cylinder engine on there, it's going to be a lot different than if you are trying to run a, big block Hemi type of a deal. And then our tire pressure is going to be 13 to 16 PSI, and that's going to be pending on the track. And you can't read that, but that says the wheel stretch. So when you stretch the wheels, or stretch the tire on the wheels on like a 15-inch wheel, let's say it's 16 wide, like what we have on there, that's going to stiffen up the sidewalls a lot more, and you're going to run a little bit less pressure on there. So we might actually start in that 13 range, might even actually go down to 12, but the common on there is going to be at 13 to 16. So that's kind of what we are changing on here. Now let's show you exactly how we change that. Okay, so we are actually underneath the car right now, and we're going to talk about what the spreads and the pinion angle and what all that actually is under here, so you guys understand that. I can just say words and go, yeah, set your spread and your pinion angle and the thing and the stuff, but if you don't know what that means, it's not going to help you out. So now if you see real quick, there's Al.
Hello.
Underneath our car, there's some LED lights that are up there, and we have a switch right here next to the battery. We put that on there intentionally, so when we are at the track and we have to make any changes, we can flip that on and we can see everything while we're working under here, because it can get dark. So, but Al, go ahead, explain to all of the many viewers at home. We were talking about spreads on there and pinion angle, and let's explain kind of what the spread is and how you'd adjust that, and then talk about the pinion angle
Sure.
stuff.
Spreads on the rear. Okay, we'll just go with that first. The spread on the rear is actually the measurement between the bolt that goes through the bottom bar and the bolt that goes through the top bar. So if you take a measurement of that, get it centered on there. On our car, we actually have a 13-inch spread.
Okay,
right
and
now
that's center of the bolt to center of the bolt.
Center of the bolt to the center of the bolt.
Okay.
Okay, so you want to get as much spread as possible when you're doing the radial tires, which we've got it in the bottom hole here. The second to the top hole here, it still gives us a little bit of adjustability at the track. So in case we want to put a little bit more bite into it, we can always take and raise this bar up one, and that will give us more bite at the track, initial bite.
Yep. And if it has too much initial bite, we can always drop it down one.
We can drop it down.
Okay. Now, pinion angle.
Pinion angle. That's always a critical one that people want to sit there and debate how to set pinion angle. But this is how we do it.
This is for setting pinion angle specifically for a radial.
For a radial car.
Okay.
Radial car, you're going down the track. This rear end is going to be hiked up. And the suspension is basically going to be dropping out of the car.
Yep. So if you see the suspension is dropped down, this is at a full extension like this on here because all the weight's there. That's what the radial is meant to do on there.
So when you're going down the track, you don't want to have a positive pinion angle due to the fact that you bind everything up. So on our rear end, we actually have tabs that are on the top of it that are set at 0, or they're basically set level. And that's the tab up here. Now I can take my smart tool and go up there. I can do that, and I can hit hold. When I hit hold, it will come down here and it will tell me that one right now is sitting at 5.1 degree. Okay. We'll zero that out.
And that just goes back to a factory set 0.
Now I'm back at a factory set 0. So I'll put it on top of this right here. And once again, I'll just hit the hold. That's 7.3. So right now I have a negative 2.1 pinion angle in this ad group.
2.2.
2.2.
Okay, so negative 2.2.
The greatest.
Yeah,
so we're at 2.2.
You're within a tenth. We'll give you credit there.
We'll be okay. It's set at 2.2 degrees of pinion angle in the rear right now.
Now, if somebody didn't have a tab like we have up there,
yep,
what would they measure off of here on the rear end?
You can measure off the yoke. If you've got a forged yoke or a billet yoke, you can go off the top of the yoke here, make sure that the yoke is straight up and down.
Yep, we're in park right now. So
we're in park right now, but you can measure off the yoke as long as your drive shaft isn't in the way.
You can get a smaller one. I actually have one that I use over on the mill. It's about this big on there. You can get them at like Harbor Freight. They're like 30 or 40 bucks, and they work great on there. You just have to make sure on those ones, they do have a factory reset 0, but you do want to just double check the calibration on them. But they worked great for us as well, so you can put it right on that yoke. So one thing I want to have Al talk to all of you guys about, going from a floppy tire, a big floppy tire, to a radial, is we were talking that it separates the suspension. Now, how do we get it to separate on there?
Okay, well, a big difference in the suspension setup between a floppy tire versus a radial is the angle of these bars in the back. On a big tire, you generally would take and run a downward angle of about a 0.5 degree or level. That way when the chassis squats, it's got the correct geometry to push forward and such like that. Now, on a radial vehicle, completely different. You want this rear end to separate out of the vehicles. So we run an upward bar angle, which basically pushes the rear end underneath of the car to a certain degree and puts the whole weight of this rear of the car onto these tires, driving the tires into the glue that's on the track.
Okay, so basically since you're running this upward on there, when it hits, it's just starting to shove all of this that it's attached to up.
Correct.
And then the tire down.
Correct. Which
okay.
puts the weight of the vehicle onto the tires.
Perfect. I mean, there you guys have it. There's your basics of floppy tire to radial setup. We've got, kind of where you're going to put bar angles, things like that on there. And how we're going to control it is with the shocks, the extension, and everything on there. I would love to tell you guys every little bit of how we're going to do everything on here. But like I said, we do have some people that are helping us, that are giving us some really good information, and I don't want to upset them because that's information that they've worked really hard for as well. So, but thank you guys for watching. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, share, do everything there. We appreciate everybody for watching that does watch on here, and all of the comments, you know, let us know. So, thank you guys again for watching. I know Al thanks you a whole bunch. He's been having a whole bunch of fun here. And until next time, be safe out there.